Thank you for clicking on this video. I just wanted to plug this book real quick before we jump into reviewing this little beauty. If you don't have this and you're a Smith & Wesson guy, get this. It's the Smith & Wesson Standard Catalog of Smith & Wesson, 4th edition. This thing has got all kinds of little goodies in it and stuff like that, and I don't know if I'm allowed to show you, flip through some pages on it or whatnot, but we'll just show you a quick flip through. Reference numbers, serial numbers, model numbers, descriptions, history, stuff like that. Excellent, excellent book, like I said, especially if you're a Smith guy like me. Okay, folks, so what we have here is by definition, I believe this is called a Smith & Wesson M&P hand ejector 38. Now, as you can see, this one has lived a kind of a hard life. She's not collector grade. She's definitely a shooter grade. Someone tried to clean her up at one time. Looks like they did a half-ass rebluing job on it of some sort. And I will admit that the camera does make it a little bit worse than it looks in person. You know, the camera brings out all the flaws in her and everything, but let's make sure we're empty. Yes, we are empty. So, let me talk about this a little bit. Per the Smith & Wesson catalog, this was made between 1940 and 1945, based on the serial number, which is in the 800,000 range. Per my email to Smith, Smith is telling me it was made in 1941. Now, what's interesting about this one, if you look here on the barrel, 38 S&W cartridge. Now, I'm not for sure, but I believe this was originally chambered in 38 Smith & Wesson, which is different than 38 Smith & Wesson Special. What leads me to believe that, let me show you a few things first. Number one, the serial number is in 3 places on these old ones. Here on the bottom, underneath the barrel lug, and then on the rear of the cylinder. Now, I know I went too fast, but the serial number does match in all 3 places. But looky here, it's stamped right here, caliber 38 special. Well, I believe at some point, I don't know if it was Smith or some armorer or something like that, but I think that they drilled out the cylinder to accept the 38 special. Now, those who don't know, if you have a revolver that is chambered in 38 Smith & Wesson, a 38 Smith & Wesson cartridge diameter is just a little bit bigger than the 38 special. I think a 38 Smith & Wesson is around 386 thousandths, and a 38 special is around 379 thousandths, so about 7 thousandths bigger. So you can't put a 38 Smith & Wesson cartridge into a 38 special. It's too big. But a 38 special will fit into a 38 Smith & Wesson, but it won't go all the way, because the 38 Smith & Wesson is actually around, I want to say it's around 1.2 inches long, and a 38 special is just a hair over an inch and a half, like 155, I believe. So I think this one was bored out. Another common indicator is when you look inside the cylinder, you can see that there's two levels in there where the cartridge would go. The first one is where the 38 Smith & Wesson cartridge stopped. And then, of course, then the bullet would kind of poke through that a little bit and everything. The second one is where someone had drilled it out to accept a 38 special cartridge into it. Now, I won't drop one in here because of the YouTube things. I don't want it to flag it or anything. But this will chamber 38 specials. Now, what's that mean? Well, it means a couple of things. Being that the 38 Smith & Wesson cartridge was a little bit smaller diameter, again, if you remember, it was about, what, 7 thousandths smaller than the 38 Smith & Wesson. When you shoot a 38 special through a cartridge, one that's been chambered like this, the casing is going to want to expand on you, and it makes it to where you pretty much can't reload it, from my understanding. Or it's a pain. You have to resize it and everything else. And also sometimes if you have a real hot one, which you don't want to do in these ones that have been recalibrated, you might have some case splitting even. Could even potentially be a dangerous situation, actually. So that's why if you ever have one of these, most people recommend you shoot something mild. These are 158 grain, good old-fashioned lead round nose. You don't want to put plus P's in it. Mostly I would probably shoot like something real mild, like Cowboy Action Load, wad cutters, or something like that in it, to be honest with you. And also the fact that the 38 Special bullet is just a little bit smaller diameter than the 38 Smith & Wesson, you know, you're going to have a bullet that's a little bit looser in the barrel, which means you might have a little bit diminished accuracy. Now, how much? I doubt a hillbilly like me would be able to tell it, but you never know. If you have a guy that's a real good shooter or something like that, they may be able to tell you. So, with that said, you know, the majority of the time, they don't stamp this on here unless someone has deemed this as being safe to fire. But I definitely would not be loading plus Ps in this. And this is, again, this is kind of a shooter grade, but if I'm shooting it, it's going to be 158 grade lead round nose or maybe wad cutters or something like that. So, but this is a rather interesting part of the history, of the Model 10 history. A lot of guys would call this a pre-Model 10. I don't know if I would or not, because some people have different definitions of what makes it a pre-Model 10. This is what they call a 5-screw. Can you guess why? It has a screw here, 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 and here. Well, that's only 4. Wait a minute. There's another one right here. That's the 5th one. That's why they tend to call these a 5-screw model. It came out just before the Victory models, and if you know your Smith & Wesson Model 10 history, you know that the Victory models have a V in front of the serial number, and then they usually have a lanyard ring or something like that affixed, or sometimes they'll have a plug where a lanyard ring was at one time. Now, these grips are not original to it, which you can tell. I mean, they're not a perfect fit. You know, you can see some gapping in it, like here, things like that. But this is the closest I had. You know, these came with actually a pair of just K-frame grips on it, some cheap plastic stab-looking ones that really looked kind of terrible, and I just wanted something more close to what it originally felt like. And I have smallish hands anyway, so I like these old pre-Model 10 grips that they're cut out to ride right up inside the frame. But we'll take a couple little close pans at this one. This is a nice one to have in the collection, but I will admit I have thought about trading it too. You know, I like to use my guns, and since I'm limited to, you know, wad cutters or the 158 grain stuff, I'm not real crazy about that. You can see it is a pin barrel, but when they did the rework, someone got a little bit happy with the sander and got a hold of the pin a little bit. And on camera, you can really see a color difference between the barrel and here, but in person you can see it, but it's not quite as drastic, that's for sure. See the sight, not the best job Smith on that one, but you know, hey, it'll work. I originally thought maybe this had been rebarreled, but like I said, it does have matching serial numbers. All 3 serial numbers match on this one, so it is the original barrel with it. And like all models at this time, and we have previously checked, it is clear, it does have the hammer mounted firing pin. Has the traditional Model 10 sights, and like most Model 10s of this era that I've encountered, that hammer just about blocks your rear shot profile. You see that? It's because at the time, I think a lot of these guys, these things were fired single action the majority of the time. You know, think of the old police shooting videos, police match shooting videos and things like that. But this is just a nice old gun, folks. You know, if you haven't seen my other Model 10 videos, I've got a couple of them out there, and I still have one more to do. I've got a snub-nosed Model 10 that's absolutely beautiful. I'll be doing a video on that probably after the first of the year. But it's just a nice one to have in the collection. Let's take a weight on it. Y'all know I like to show my weight. And this is unloaded. We're coming in at 29 ounces. And let's measure this barrel length, because you know, I actually haven't done that. Right at a 4-inch barrel, right there. Very, very interesting gun. A lot of history in these old Model 10s. I remember a few years ago, before COVID, you could go and buy a lot of these pencil barrel Model 10s, police turn-ins that were manufactured in the 80s. Gosh, you could find them for... I walked into Camping World over here just in Katy, Texas, just outside of Houston, and that's the one I did in my old video. I paid $270 for that out the door, I believe. You could have them really cheap, and they're definitely nice shooting revolvers. This one, you know, I've got a little bit more in that. I believe I'm wanting to say I traded a guy. I had a, I've got it. Well, you know what? Actually, if I go back through my trades, I really only have about $270 in this one, but I would probably try to trade it or sell it for probably like the mid 500 range or something like that if I can get it. I probably wouldn't be able to get it, which means I'll probably keep it. But yeah, just a neat old Smith & Wesson. I like to look at these old firearms like this and just think about the history, who shot them before, who owned it, how many people own this are still alive now, how many people are long gone. You know, just interesting just to look at these old weapons. You know, thanks for watching. Thanks for my ramble. Let me know if you have any questions on this. You know, drop them down in the comments. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, go ahead and click that subscription button. Be safe out there. You guys have a great holiday season.